Good morning, afternoon, evening, or insomnia wandering, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Tori, and this is our inaugural YouTube live event. Welcome. Today, I am here to read snippets from a few of our bunker authors, and there was supposed to be a chat. I'm sorry, we will have that for you next time. Didn't quite work out. Well, I that is all I have for you. Why don't we start reading? The first book that I have today is from Liz Alderman. She is one of my very favorite authors and a good friend of mine. Her book is A Different Type of Poison. I actually have a physical copy, not printed out. And the selection she chose is from the beginning. And I'm going to start with the prologue. I step onto the wide front porch. It is worn with wood planks creak beneath me. The welcome mat lies crooked, its cheerful cherries faded, flowers browned and hunchbacked, wither inside the planters that flank the double doors. Petunias, begonias, they were probably lovely when they were alive. It's dusk. A full moon rises behind me. No light inside. Still, it's bright enough that when I press my face to the glass, I can see an entry table, mail stacked, shoes jumbled in a pile, a couch, and a pair of armchairs to the left. Once I had the address, I scanned the old listing photos. I wanted to get the lay of the land, a feel for the house, its exits. That's the right thing, the smart thing to do. It looked nicer online, doesn't everything? My right hand hovers above the doorbell. In my left is a bouquet of lilies. Peonies felt too on the nose. The book is tucked beneath my arm. Its weight steadies me. That's all I need, really. But, of course, I brought other things too. It's time. I take a deep breath, let the clean country air fill my lungs. Nearby, someone has cut the grass. My nose twitches at the sweetness of it. I press the bell. Its chime dulled, muted, either by the window panes or the ringing in my ears, as I wait, wondering how this will go. What will happen from here? Shadows shift behind the glass, movement. A figure comes toward me. When I see her face, I nearly step back. She's aged quite a bit, like someone who's been through it. Haven't we all? Each in our own way. Still, it's been a particularly rough time for her. It's about to get a lot worse. Chapter 1. Molly. Enjoy the moment. I remind myself and smile at the audience. My audience. I took half a Xanax before I left the house. It's starting to work its magic, the butterflies in my stomach slowly settling. My other novels never drew a crowd like this. Of course, they were quiet fiction, as Denise, my former agent, loved to call them. Tales of dysfunctional families in sleepy towns, leading small, sad lives. Nothing like my latest, a thriller that had rocketed to the top of the bestseller list and remained there for weeks. I'm seated, legs crossed, beneath a flowy floral dress that cost more than my monthly car payment. Perched atop a navy velvet chair, to my left is the reigning queen of suspense, Selena Sanborn. It's a pinch me moment. I can't believe she's here, this brilliant author with the cascading silver hair and shock of red lipstick. As a teen, I read her twisty epics filled with strong-willed, wily women by flashlight beneath a fraying quilt so my mother wouldn't see me wide awake well past my bedtime. Now her novels line my office shelves. Selena lobs softball questions my way, yet it's obvious she's read my words and that alone is unexpected and magical as a lottery win. She lives a few towns away and has a new book out in September, so this event benefits her too. Still, she's here to interview me. Me. What a change from the days when I'd lug a box of my books to a signing because Bonnie, the local bookshop owner, was reluctant to stock more than a half dozen for fear she'd have to return them. Inside the corner of that musty bookstore, I sat surrounded by classics and best-selling debuts, trying not to sulk, pen in hand, writing nothing more than a grocery and to-do list. I'd end up dragging home all but one copy, a sales associate making the lonely pity purchase with a smile and a shrug, the kindly, "Oh, if it hadn't rained, I'm sure you'd have had a great turnout." Tonight, I didn't have to bring so much as a water bottle. Everything had been handled for me. It's a ticketed event, sold out for weeks. Georgia, my new agent, reminded me that this afternoon in her "Enjoy the Moment" email, Bonnie had to move the reading from the bookstore to this theater nestled among the rolling hills of a small Hudson Valley college. Of course, most people are probably here for Selena, but Georgia had the grace not to mention that. Pink peonies, soft as cotton candy, bloom in a pale green vase set on the low table between Selena and me. It's a nice touch, as this particular flower plays a role in my novel. Book covers larger than movie posters stand on easels flanking us. Against a ruby and gold backdrop, blackbirds hover above the silhouettes of two young women, their hair blown wild in the implied breeze. Tree branches, bare and menacing, arch and twist to create the title, "Birds at Night." Seeing my name, M.J. Archer, even though it's just my initials followed by my ex-husband's surname, makes my breath catch every time. It doesn't seem real, but it is. And I need to focus because Bonnie is striding purposefully through the aisle saying, "Next question, yes, you with the ponytail." As the young woman stands, a hush falls over the room. The only sound, the soft rustling as the microphone changes hands. I brace myself. This is the scariest part, the not knowing. The seconds when I wait, wondering, what will this person ask? Over the past few months, I've fielded dozens of questions about my writing process. My answer never changes. With two young children, I always keep a notebook in my bag so I'm able to write whatever and whenever I have an idea. I say, sometimes it's not even writing. I've been known to leave a voice memo, or even in the old days, a message on my answering machine. The implication, I've been at this for ages, garner a few chuckles. People swoon at an overnight success story, but who do they really love? An underdog. They want to hear about the struggle, the muddy boot prints on your once pure and hope-filled heart. They want to know how you found the strength to rise when the world tried to hold you down. What made you shift from the literary fiction? Is another popular question. It feels like an insult, but whatever. Each time I fight the urge to say, money, duh. That's not entirely untrue. This project has been a demon inside me, clawing and screaming its way to the surface for years. But rather than get into that, I opt for the simpler response. I tend to pursue the project I am most passionate about at the time. If you're going to spend years writing, revising, and rereading, you need to love your story, whichever genre it may be. This is typically met with affirming nods all around, the audience transformed into a sea of bobbleheads. It's the truth, yet it feels like I'm lying. This novel didn't take years. It flew out of me, as dark and fierce as the one of the blackbirds on its eye-catching cover. There's only one question I refuse to answer directly. I draw in a deep breath as the woman begins. Hi? Her voice wavers. These characters feel so real to me. Did you base them on people you know? There it is. I've rehearsed my answer at home in the bathroom mirror. I like to think I've mastered this response, but my nerves betray me. Heat spreads across my chest. It rushes up my neck and into my face. Beside the vase of peonies sit 2 glasses beaded with condensation. I reach for mine, wishing it were filled with wine instead of water. I take a small sip and pause for effect, remembering a line from the novel. When in doubt, answer a question with a question. Oh goodness, I think we all know people like these characters, don't we? With a throaty laugh and a head toss, I lean into the witty artist persona I am attempting to cultivate with this tour. Selena joins in, and soon hoots and howls ripple through the theater, bouncing back to me, a gift from the generous acoustics. I could say more, but I don't. There's power in silence. The levity subsides, shifting to a lull that gives way to another swell of applause. When it does, I smile, this time genuinely. I've been promoting this book for 6 weeks, and it never gets old. The feeling of adoration of people cheering just for me. It's foreign and fantastic, heady, a drug without side effects. Still, pain stretches from my left eye to my hairline, signaling the start of a migraine. Storm clouds loomed on the drive here, flashes of lightning electrifying the late spring sky. Now raindrops patter against the roof, puddling the pooling on the skylights. My mind shifts to Ingrid's tears. I picture my daughter sobbing an hour earlier while I raced from room to room, trying to locate my missing earring. What is it now, love? My voice was strained, my patience waning as I dumped makeup bags and rooted through the hamper. I'd returned from my 3-city tour nearly a week ago, but hadn't fully unpacked. I can't find my Wasbowie tights, Ingrid whimpered. Her R's came out more like W's. Shoot, I muttered. Once again, I'd forgotten to respond to emails from the speech therapist Ingrid's kindergarten teacher recommended. I need them for tomorrow. My daughter whined. For the concert. The concert? When was it? 10 a.m.? I had a radio interview scheduled. What time was that? 10:30? No. 11? My chest tightened. Help me look, Ingrid begged. I can't right now, Pumpkin. I'm already late. I didn't need to see my 5-year-old's face to know it was crumpling. Did you leave your tights at your dad's? Dan and I had separated 2 years ago, yet somehow our daughter still hadn't grasped that her belongings, like her holidays, her home, and her heart, would be forever divided, something always missing, invariably left behind. Because of us, she's become tortoise-like, carrying what she needs, what makes her feel safe, on her back in an endless shuttling. Isaac, I handed my phone to my son, who at 8 is already as tech-savvy as any personal assistant I could have hired. Text your father, please. Ask if he's seen your sister's raspberry tights. My lucky tights, Ingrid corrected. One sec. Isaac's brown eyes remained fixed on my iPad, where he played yet another game of Subway Surfers. When his avatar failed to land on the next train, he swapped devices, sent the text, and toggled between apps. Hey! He smiled, revealing the tooth he'd lost at lunch. You've got invited to something. To what? I moaned, envisioning an end of school year mother's tea or an invitation to the co-chair for the next field day committee. A book club, Isaac said. That's from someone named Anna Fox. She says she's obsessed with birds at night and wants to know if you can come to her book club. A giddy rush surged through me, that same welcome dizziness I felt when I stood after finishing a martini. When my last 2 books came out, a few kind-hearted local friends, mostly moms from Isaac's school and Ingrid's daycare, invited me to their book clubs, especially once word of my divorce started to spread. We want to support you, these women said, rubbing my arms as if I'd received a devastating diagnosis. In their eyes, I imagined a failed marriage and the pursuit of a career as a novelist were as dire as any illness. I appreciated their thoughtfulness, but it hit differently when strangers reached out. Their interests seemed pure and therefore more valuable. At the bottom of my author website, I'd written a few lines. I love to meet with readers virtually or in person. I promise not to drink all your Chardonnay. I hadn't gotten many inquiries in the past, perhaps a handful of requests from librarians or virtual visits. But now the buzz building around birds at night, I needed to delete that paragraph or I'd never have time to finish my sequel. Did Anna Fox say where she lives? I finger-combed the back of my hair as I waited for Isaac to blurt Alaska or some far-flung place nowhere near our home in New York. Milltown, Ohio, my son said. That's where Nana lives, right? It is. I abandoned my earring search, settled on silver hoops, and reached for the phone. I skimmed the message. Anna Fox. Did we go to high school together? Anna Fox. Ingrid's chaotic ransacking of the house made it impossible to focus, so I tossed the phone in my purse, grabbed an umbrella, and hurried out the door as soon as Heather, my tenant/babysitter, arrived to stay with the children. On the drive to the theater, I assured myself that once I had a few quiet moments to think, Anna's face and whatever connection we shared would swim back to me. Anna Fox. The name floats through my mind as I sit on the stage, shifting in my chair. Her words, "It would be wild to see you again," imply that we know one another. I should remember her, it suggests. Why don't I? That's the end of our selection from Liz Alterman and her book, A Different Type of Poison. And I have to admit, I've read it all, and I adore this book. The links will be on our Patreon page. All of Liz's books, actually, I've got on our Patreon page, and I suggest that you head there afterwards to find them, because Liz's books are thrilling, if you don't mind the pun. Give me a second, and we'll move on to our next one. And our next author is new to our Patreon crew and our Bunker Squirrel group of people. Collings McRae, who I've just chatted with a bit, and I love her already. And the book that we have a selection from is Resurrection of the Ruby Skull. You will also find all of Collings' books linked on our Patreon page. And let's get into our next selection. Grace watched her husband sleep. He said he needed to return to work. I should wake him. She stared into space, her knees pulled to her chest under the bedclothes. When she considered what was coming, her stomach pinched. The acid crawled up her throat, spinning her thoughts, nauseating her. She couldn't bring herself to wake him, or look at his sprawling form, face down on the duvet. Nothing ever settles. She fantasized his mother's stew, a childhood comfort, would lessen the turmoil she was planning. As always, Fox changed the plan. Overwhelms me. His need for me is a fence, a jail. I offer stew as a sacrifice. Maybe he'll be satisfied with stew and not devour me. The arm blasted on Fox's phone, sending a red flash through Grace's chest. She lunged across him to stop the noise. Whoa, what? Fox jumped, then smiled as he saw his wife scrambling off him. I'm always up for it, pet, but I'm already late. He drew her into his arms and kissed her forehead. Careful with the knees, though. That'll put a crimp in it. Sorry, lad. Sorry. The alarm startled me. I love you. Cupping her face, he stroked her eyebrow and pushed a curl behind her ear. My ginger girlie. Sorry, honey. Startled me. Grace repeated, her cheeks flaming. Guilt drove the heat through her. He's an innocent, so transparent. She ran her hand across his dark, stubbled jaw. Don't shave. Stay here with me. Got an entire crew coming for the interviews. Can't resemble a caveman. Texting Missy that I'll be in at 2:30. It'll do them good to wait for me. Fox punched in the text and set the phone on the walnut bed table. He swung his long legs off the four-poster bed, centered in the master bedroom. I'll be late tonight. You going back to work? No, Grace said. I'm fixing your mum's stew, remember? Half day for me. She picked at her cuticles. I think Marles is coming over this afternoon. Fox turned to his wife and blinked. Coming over? What's that mean? Marley lives here. He's actually beautiful. Unreal, a painting. Your hair is crazy. You need a shower. Grace drew the bedsheet over her shoulders. If you were in my interview room, I would note the obfuscation. As your adoring husband, I merely comment on your attempt at distraction. Fox tilted his head, blinking again. Grace saw the struggle pass through those pale eyes as his cheeks grew pink. He opened his mouth, hesitated, then pressed his lips shut and turned away. I'm aware there's something's going on with our daughter. I'm waiting for someone to decide if I'm to know. Grace tried to answer, to reassure him. Nothing came, and she watched Fox drag on his boxers. A shower then. Glad everything is tidy. His accent was heavy as he fell into Welsh slang. He stalked past, and when he closed the bathroom door, the lock clicked. Take me back, Lord. Hide me inside her passion for a while longer. She lay her head on her knees and listened to the shower start. Inhaling, she dressed and went into the kitchen to make the stew. Grace began the mirepoix, chopping carrots, celery, and onions. The familiar cooking tasks always felt like acts of love to her, and they distracted her. Calm down. When Fox came through the kitchen on his way to the garage, he was wearing a blazer, a light green t-shirt, and jeans. That's new, she said. No tie? This art glass chap is a fancy casual. Dress casual, Grace silently corrected. But she didn't speak, returning to the vegetables. My news can wait. Thanks for not cutting your hair too short. You're dashing. He'll fall in love. Always my goal. I suspect I'll need him to come to it in this case. Behind her, Fox hesitated, shifting in his odd dance. Denim material rustled as he flipped his phone in his pocket. The noises amplified in Grace's ears. She recognized the stimming, and as it always did, her blood pressure built in a visceral response. She heard him mumble, "Jeans are torture." My news has to wait. She felt his gaze linger on her back, his silence weighing on her. She fought not to react. Half the world loves jeans, honey. Stew at 8? I've got this new red wine. The tremble in her voice echoed like a scream. Don't go. Hide with me. I sent a guy to the cardiologist today, a glass company employee I was interviewing. Expect you'll have surgery in short order. May have to sort that. Fox's voice was tight and low, and Grace could hear that he was looking down. The shuffling grew faster, each step a physical blow. Finally he whispered, "You were here with me, and now you're gone. I don't understand what I've done." Tears popped into Grace's eyes. She knew what saying it out loud cost him. Forcing herself to face him, she was struck by the wave of loneliness pouring off her husband. God, this crushing love grinding me to ash. Come here, darling lad. She stepped onto his shoes, wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face into his chest. She breathed in, inhaling him. I cling to him for protection when I should protect him. It's perverse. Marley's moving to DC. She wants me to join her for a while. Just let her, and things settled. Nothing is ever settled. Fox stiffened, his fingers tensing on her back. There wasn't going to be a right time. He didn't move, and the stillness washed out into the room, drowning me. At last he bent and kissed her on the top of her head, rubbing his chin on her hair. Lifting her off his feet, he set her down on the tile, kissing her head again. Well, he said and walked out. Grace listened as the garage door opened and closed. Well, she repeated out into the empty room. Her breath clutched in her lungs, driving her into the chair. She pressed her forehead onto the cool surface of the table, tears rolling down her nose. I'm the other, like de Beauvoir. My wings are clipped, wages for this guileless love. Well, that's Collings McRae, Resurrection of the Ruby Skull. And if she doesn't know how to pull on your heartstrings, I don't know who does. And I hope you will check out her books. on the Patreon page. I apologize for the water. I am recovering from a respiratory infection. I'm going to move on to Pam Martin Lawrence, another friend of mine, and a great bunker author of ours, and her book, The Tale of a Dragon. Excuse me. Gold bracelet, 18 karat, 4 pigeon blood rubies, women's, damaged clasp. Ball set the trinket atop his shiny pile and returned to the doomed camphor trunk for one final rummage. His clasping claws came up empty 3 times before he struck gold in the last corner. And lastly, rose gold ring, 18 karat, engagement, large sapphire, baguette cut, candy pink, flawless size, Clearing his throat huskily, Ball squinted and shook his head, reminding himself that his eye test was long overdue. Size tar. Inventory complete. Approximate value 12,500 shekels. He replaced the ring carefully in its corner of the trunk and began the time-consuming task of returning his hoard tidily to its fragrant fortress. The 7 interlocked locks snicked closed smoothly, and he tucked the key in his Friday hidey-hole before leaving his hoard room. He looked furtively left and right, saw nobody, and fumbled with the code panel, doing a quick reset. Ball prided himself on being a safety kind of dragon, a belt and braces sort of a beast. Later, over dinner, with his parents in the big, echoey castle dining room, Ball found his attention wandering as the talk turned and his customarily did to gold. While they bickered happily over the merits of their favorite treasures, he left his parents far behind and found himself lost in his memories, treading again the familiar meandering path away from the castle. When his mind reached the golden sandstone bluff overlooking the swimming hollow in the bend of the river, he paused, remembering the year of the burn. That summer of lasts and firsts, he and his cohort spent every day of that blazing summer down in the swimming hole, comparing their pubescent ponytails and freshly forked tongues, basking on the scorching red rocks and the flexing of their iridescent scales to catch the best reflections, and always with one febrile golden eye on those human wenches primly splashing their pretty pink paws in the shallows, peeping admiringly at the dragolescence from under their lashes. What swishing of tails they incited! What incendiary snorts and husking! Ball's unready throat was sore for a month after a day he first set eyes on her, and she set him afire, the first to flame. All his friends still jealously green. Glimmer, he called her, trying to capture her radiance. A goddess, she eclipsed the sun. Eyes of purest amethyst, hair rose quartz pink, spun into cotton candy, shoulders flushed golden into thee. His mother's voice, unwelcomed, called him back to the table. That's The Adorable Tale of the Dragon by Pam Martin Lawrence. I love her writing. She is so inventive and has the most inventive ways of capturing things. I just love reading her stories. Pardon me. Next, we have an author that is new to the bunker, has some interesting stories. John Churez, and this is from his book, Branded. You'll also find a link to this book on our Patreon page. At any rate, Higher Education Dean Franklin R. Bell sighed. I believe this pre-tenure hearing is concluded. Professor Jackson Pierce couldn't resist rising to his feet. Wait, what about my teaching evaluations? R. Bell sniffed indignantly. Those are an inexact measure of competence in the classroom. Pierce couldn't believe what he was hearing. What about my students' grades, their graduation rates? Smells suspiciously like grade inflation. R. Bell had an answer for everything. Didn't you include my award from this college last year in my file? R. Bell shook his head. It's a little more than a popularity contest from your students and your friends on the faculty. If Pierce had taken his blood pressure, it would probably be at dangerous levels. What about my service to the college and the community I've worked on? Community service? R. Bell harumphed. Did you get a DUI, Professor? Pierce found himself standing before the committee, looking around the tiny room, a torture chamber for teachers. I'm sure the faculty tenure committee members will take my entire record into account before making their decision. R. Bell's eyes flickered with amusement, as if he had been waiting for this moment. I'm sure they will, but it won't really matter. Nor will your friendship with this college's president help you. The professor's life came crashing down in less than 20 minutes, as shocking as the thunderclap on a cloudless day. When the door clicked behind the departing committee members, R. Bell whirled around, a full grin that students and professors rarely saw. This is what you and your wife, the Shakespeare professor, get for opposing my policy of letting students write their papers with artificial intelligence. The normally talkative teacher was too stunned to reply. Now I know your wife in the English department has tenure. She received it last year before I arrived, or I wouldn't have had something to say about that. The dean decided to twist the knife a little, now that he had plunged it in deeply. But it would be a huge challenge in this job market to have two young scholars find tenure-track university jobs in their respective fields. Too bad. Pierce snapped out of his funk. I'll get that national publication, or win an award that you and your review committee will be impressed with. Dean R. Bell shook his head. I doubt even your wife could pull that trick off in one semester, which is all you have before the committee meets and my team reviews their work. It's such a shame, really, that you spent all your time advising, tutoring, and mentoring your college students. What part of publish or perish did you not understand, Professor? And that is Branded by John Churez, and you'll find that link on the Bunker Squirrel Patreon page as well. Next, we have Killer Quill by Shida Ketzer. Shida is an author that I've known for several years, and I am so excited to find her book on Amazon and available, and you will find her link on our Patreon page. Quill chose an auspicious summer night to assassinate the Empress. The assassin hung above a burly palace sentry, her grip straining on the cold marble edge. Guards never bothered to look up. Granted, A 5-story drop was between her and this man. This was his lucky night, as Quill never relished taking a life she was not paid to end. The gloomy sprawl of the capital, shrouded a coal smog, slumbered below. Yet the air atop the Imperial Hill was clean, wafting the sweet scent of night jasmine from the manicured gardens. A cool breeze caressed her cheeks. Behind her loomed the 3 golden domes, casting a garnished glow on the alabaster wisteria's chapel. Twin 8-story towers, smearing the somber sky, flanked the imperial palace. The fortress walls, teeming with obsidian spires, evoked monstrous jaws poised to swallow the palace whole. It was even more daunting than she remembered from 10 years ago, a past that still haunted her dreams. Quill pulled up the hood of her jet black coat with her free hand. Her fingers brushed the rainbow-colored scarf tucked inside the collar for rare emergencies. She inhaled, draining the color from a banner rippling nearby. A ribbon of amber mist snaked from the fabric toward her. She visualized the glittering ribbon fastening like a rope around a cornice above. It obliged. She gripped her improvised rope and rappelled down to a darkened 3rd-story window, landing on the balcony railing quieter than a ghost. The rope disintegrated. Her breath plumbed in front of her. Summer meant little here. She almost missed the relentless blaze of the never-setting sun scorching the vast sandy expanse of her homeland, Beck. But on this side of the planet, Beck was synonymous with damnation, a curse word. Quill unclenched her white-knuckled fists. She was not here to settle scores. Keeping a cool head was vital in her profession. Emotions could get her killed. And she had already died once. No. Her reason for accepting only high-profile missions was not that the targets usually deserved to die, or that her mysterious patrons paid a fortune. She craved the racing of her pulse at the kiss of danger, her brush with death, the intoxicating thrill that made her feel alive. She pressed her nose to the keyhole of the gilded window and breathed in the stale air, siphoning tendrils of dye and turquoise cushion on the window bench inside. Shades of blue were not sturdy enough to support weight, but were deft instead. At her command, the turquoise tendrils slithered into the keyhole and worked the tumbler. The lock clicked just before the dye was spent and dissipated into the air. She cracked open the window and listened. The only sound besides the pounding of her heart was the faint hum of music and laughter emanating from the banquet hall on the other side of the palace. Parties were frequent at the western wing. The nobility had little else to do than flaunt their wealth where it stood out the least, as those enormous ballroom chandeliers flashed more gemstones and gold than all the guests combined. Dank air enveloped her as she slipped inside the room, a tomb of forgotten pieces of art. It teemed with sculptures, rolled-up rugs, and furniture shrouded in dusty sheets. Offerings the palace received in a steady stream from the nobility and foreign dignitaries. Threading her way through, Quill came face to face with a life-size alabaster statue of the Empress's uncle, Archduke Sigist, albeit bearing a smoother face and a less hooked nose. A long-buried memory resurfaced, raising bitter bile in her throat. Her manacled hands clawing at the bedposts, the honed edge of a dagger cold against her skin. the tang of smoldering incest searing her nostrils, ring-laden fingers digging into her hip, holding her down, pain lancing up her body as the blade lacerated her flesh, the warm gush of blood coursing down her chest, the clanking of chains as her body writhed in agony, her screams ringing hollow in her ears. She slapped a palm over her mouth, dispelling the image back to the cold, dim storage room. An assassin could not afford to let an echo of a forgotten past shatter her hardened veneer. She took a deep, calming breath and composed herself. Cracking the door open, she peered into the dark hallway beyond. All was quiet outside, if not within. I know we probably want to hear more, but that's the end of the excerpt of Killer Quill by Shida Ketzer. And I have read more of this one, though not all of it. And I can tell you that this one is definitely worth reading. And you can find the link to purchase Killer Quill on our Patreon page. The next one I have read all of is For a Lark by Seth Goodman. You can see this one. And this one's interesting. You will see my name at the top. And Seth was very generous to ask me to put a blurb on his book. And the other blurbs that I've done were on the back of books. And I was flabbergasted when he put my blurb on the front. So this is a very special book for me. And Lark is an incredible character. This is just a very special book that I think everybody should read. Yeah, Seth did an incredible job with this one. And he has asked me to read a segment that is actually quite far through the book. We're in chapter 43 on page 405, which, yeah, I'm impressed that he let you sneak in so late in the game. So I am going to try to do this justice by reading you part of chapter 43 of For a Lark before I lose my voice. Melody knew what she needed to do. She just didn't want to. Not that she had much room left for pride. Now that they knew about her, everyone loves to say change is good, but no one tells you how hard it is. It's hard to swallow your pride and admit you fucked up and need their help. The motel room's stained carpet, the dingy walls, and the curtains she was too afraid to open all stood as evidence against her. She'd spent the last 2 nights and part of the day in the deepest soul-searching she'd ever done. Romeo had told her none of the abuse had been her fault, which held a ring of truth, enough that she clung to it, deep in her heart of hurts, enough of a ring that she summoned all the courage she could and decided to face her past for once, rather than run from it. Her Nana had told her that she was family and didn't need to hide herself from them. Yet here she was, still hiding, still running. It was time to believe the people who cared about her. With Romeo's playlist as a backdrop, she'd attempted, as honestly as she could, to give her life some context. Her parents were addicts who failed to provide the nurturing or security that she should have. Most, if not all, her abusers were addicts as well. During her teenage years, she'd played no role in any of it, other than existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. As a young adult, she'd hidden her truth from Nana, arguably the only person in her life who truly loved and cared for her. She'd sold her body from various stages, believing she had no other value or worth, and turning her only talent into a way of making a living. And she'd erected walls around her heart while training her mind not to feel. Even so, she felt. She felt such depths of anger and shame, and more pain one's soul should ever have to bear. Rage that required nothing more than a word, a look, an inference, and she was ready to burn it all down. What she failed to feel was joy, excitement, happy anticipation. She couldn't seem to muster up hope or a promise of better days to come. And most importantly, not love. But then her time at Starlight had begun, and while that chapter of her life was now over, the people she had worked with were kind and genuine toward her. Candy, Rose, Eileen, Coco, and the others. And she had also met and what befriended Romeo? Or was it more? Was it much more? As she allowed her songs to loop on repeat, it was there again, confronting her. A statement that became a question. There's a hope that's waiting for you in the dark. Was it possible? To believe in the concept of hope was the one thing. But hope for her? That was the leap across a chasm that had never seemed remotely possible. Nearly a lifetime of self-loathing screamed that she was a fool to think anything had changed. But now she had actual evidence to the contrary. People who believed in her, who knew her, but didn't see her as trash, who knew her and still wanted her in their lives. Drawing strength from the memories, she stood determined. Yes, change was going to be hard, but it was time. Time to take the first step. She slung her purse across her shoulder and headed to her car. That's just a tiny excerpt out of For a Lark. It's not a short book, but it is a book worth dedicating time to. And I assure you, you will fly through reading this book and you won't want to put it down. The last one is mine. If you are still with us, my book, my first novel, The Host, it is a thriller and it's a longer excerpt that I put out. So the first thing before I get started, what I wanted to say at the beginning is the part of the reason that I wanted to read these excerpts is that I wanted you to hear the different voices from all of these authors. Each novel and each author has a unique way of storytelling. And when we put our books up on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you buy your books, you'll hear a description of what the book is about. But that doesn't tell you how the person writes the story, the voice that you hear in the book. And you'll hear, as I've read these, there's just a different voice in the storytelling, and they're each really unique. And that's something that I love about reading books and something I love about each of these different authors. And that was what I wanted you to take away from this. I'm going to get into mine now. The Host, it is a locked room thriller. And I hope you enjoy this. This one will also have links in there. And once I'm done with this, I will talk about a way to win some books. And I hope you stick with us. One more drink. Screwdriver in hand, I raced back to the theater to begin. Down the hall, through the door, I jumped over some steps down the side of the theater. Realizing I was a little overexcited, I took a breath to slow myself down. In, out, in, out. Ready. I pried the cover off the return. The vent looked dark, but clean. I'd never been claustrophobic, but somehow I felt like I was about to crawl into my own grave. I swallowed, tossed the cover aside, put my arms out in front of me like a diver, and squeezed my way in. It was wider than I expected, but my rib cage was still cramped, forcing shallow breathing. There were a couple of inches above my head and back, but the pressure on my sides of my rib cage and the darkness gave me the feeling that the house itself had gotten a hold of me and was squeezing me, an intentional act to let me know it would not let me escape. Focus, Monty. You're losing it. My pace was snail-like, inching my way through, pulling my body with my fingertips and toes because I couldn't move anything else in this cramped space. Every movement constricted and plodding. Ow! I'd sliced a fingertip on a sharp connection point. Didn't matter. Had to keep moving. Distance was difficult to judge, but I estimated that I'd gotten about 15 feet when heat came inexplicably blasting through. It made no sense. It was a return. Air should have been pulled from the room into the ventilation system. It shouldn't have had heat blowing through the vent into the room. Someone reversed it. What do I do now? If I continue, what will I find? If I give up, will there be another way out? I have to press on. The heat was intense, an industrial level of heat and force. If I pass out in this vent, Henry knows I'm in the theater. He'll find me. But there's no way he can fit in here and get me out. I pushed the thought out of my mind. Dwelling on the negative wouldn't get me out of the house any faster. I had to keep going. Why is this vent so long? How long are vents anyway? I felt like I had long since crawled beyond the length of the house. Exhausted and sweating like I was in a sauna, my hands lost their traction and I slipped as I tried to pull myself forward. Weird. There's a light up ahead. Why is there a light in an air duct? Can it be in the center of the heating system? Seems the wrong place for that. Maybe I can reach the attic. Better yet, the exterior of the house. I stretched and pulled myself forward, slipping and struggling as I went. As I sweat through my clothes completely, it became even more challenging to move. My wet clothes became heavy and adhered to the metal, and I lost my grip on the vent entirely. The light grew brighter, and I forced myself to slither closer. There's another grate. My body stretched to its limits in a desperate effort to reach the grate at the end of the shaft. The tips of my fingernails barely scratched it. I wiped sweat off my hands onto the ceiling of the vent and made one last attempt to pull myself the last few centimeters until I jammed my fingers between the bars. I grabbed the grate and yanked on it with my body's weight. I'd made it. Instantly, as if in response to my touch, the heat and the light turned off. Wait, is this a game? Is someone taunting me? I pulled myself closer and felt around the vent cover. It wasn't a cover at all. Heavy iron bars had been welded there, and they didn't budge. The light, it appeared, was to give me hope. There, so I could see the end, and then whoever had deposited us in that house took it away, so I'd realize the vent was not a means of escape at all. It was a cruel and sadistic feint. I cried out into the darkness and tried to kick at the sides of the vent, though the cramped space wouldn't give me that relief. Lying there for a moment of rest after my struggle, it occurred to me that not only was the heat not blowing, but there was no longer airflow at all. It's getting stuffy. I'm going to pass out if I don't get moving. I pounded the heel of my hand on the metal grate one last time before I began to back out. Hadn't been easy on the way in, but backward was worse. I tried to be logical, focused, even clinical about my situation. Freaking out and getting emotional wouldn't get me out of the vent. I analyzed my difficulties, trying to overcome them. My knees were in my way. My feet couldn't feel the way my hands had on the way in. My shirt rode up, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get my arms down to unbutton it and get it off. The whole vent was slick because I had sweat my entire way in, greasing the length of the vent. I was barely able to maneuver over my wedged shoes to leave them behind. I had taken them off on the way in because they were the wrong choice in footwear for impersonating John McClane, and I needed better traction. My clothes were torn from every angle by parts of the vent. It turned out that the seams of the vent were pointed toward that light, and they were razor sharp. So I was on the slicing end of the journey, getting nicked and cut at almost every junction. I'm getting nowhere fast, and clinical thinking isn't helping. I'm shimmying my way through a pitch black, slimy cheese grater. This isn't working. I can't do this on my stomach. I struggled and grunted, and I rolled onto my back. This is a little better. I'd hardly made any progress squirming my way back down the vent, my arms still pinned overhead, before I yelped and swore out into the abyss. I'd been skewered. Somehow, I'd managed to wedge a sharp piece of the aluminum vent into the meat of the outer edge of the back of my thigh. I shifted in an attempt to carefully maneuver off the shard, but the vent was too tight. How did I impale myself in the first place? I tried to roll off, but somehow I seemed to sink the ragged strip of metal further into my flesh. I howled, echoing through the aluminum prism. I braced myself onto the sides of the vent so the fragment couldn't dig in any deeper while I tried to catch my breath, but each shallow gasp sent a dagger of pain up the leg and deep into my hip. I have to get off. Think, Monty. The piece of metal has to be attached to the vent. Feels like it's dug up the length of my thigh. Maybe I can reach down and feel it. No, that didn't work. No room to pull my arms down. Needing a new tactic, I shifted my weight a little to the left, little to the right, little up, little down. Every angle so I could feel exactly where it was. I bit the collar of my shirt, dizzy with the pain. Don't pass out. Focus. Stay awake. I think I feel how it got me. You can back off it. Lift. Twist to the left. I can do this, can't I? 3 deep breaths. Don't pass. 1, 2, 3. Up. Back. Rotate to the left. I was off the metal shard, resting my forehead against the side of the vent. I gave myself a second to breathe before I tried to navigate the rest of the way out. On my side, my injured thigh turned upward. I tried to maneuver myself further out of the vent. With my arm still pinned over my head and my left thigh throbbing, bleeding all over the vent, I couldn't make the forward progress I needed. I fell over onto my back. Nope. I moved forward an inch, just enough so the shard had impaled my thigh, was perfectly positioned to skewer me in the ass like a 4th of July shish kebab. How the hell did I do that? I had apparently bent the shard vertically when twisting myself off the first time. So when I landed on it the second time, it shivved me deep in the ass. Did I hit the bone? I knew what I had to do. I just didn't want to. I had to bend it to flatten it. Really, in the process of backing it off this time, I can do it. No problem. I screamed without restraint as I pulled myself upward and let my weight rest on the shard, bending it and flattening it as I slid off it. I could feel my blood flow freely along with the shard, further lubricating the surface of the vent. Couldn't focus on that. I had to get out. Once free of the metal, I barely gave myself a moment to rest. I was afraid if I stopped, it would be for good. I pitched and rolled onto my stomach before I backed out, making sure not to stab myself with the ragged strip a third time. That would be just my luck. Slowly and carefully, I worked my way out of the vent, angry, hot, bleeding, and thinking. Plenty of time to think. This vent can't be a normal part of the house's ventilation system. It has to be some part of a twisted attempt at my captor to mess with my mind. Its sole purpose to consternate and demoralize me. But do I tell Henry? What would telling him accomplish? I had no idea how long it took me to get out. In the slippery blackness, I couldn't discern time or distance. If I was honest with myself, I didn't truly believe I would get out. I pushed on 1 inch at a time, knowing that the moisture making my journey slick and challenging was no longer my sweat, but my blood. I assumed every inch would be my last. When I fell out of the opening at the end of the vent, I collapsed over the theater steps. I closed my eyes, eternally thankful for the stiff, commercial polyester carpet that my face had replaced the stifling aluminum vent. As I rested and tried to capture my breath, I lost my sense of time. Thank you for listening to my excerpt of my thriller, The Host. You will find a link for that on our Patreon page for Bunker Squirrel Publications now. And you will also find some new books that we have just released. One of those is the Squirrel Bunker, backwards of Bunker Squirrel. This is an author planner that we've got where you can plot your days, We're trying to help people be able to not just decide they're going to write a book, but actually get it done. So it is a goal setting journal, day planning, and novel plotting. We've got, when you've got your ideas, we've got places for them, all sorts of vibrant things in here, places for story mapping. What is that? Sketch your cover. This is all sorts of stuff for you to put your books in. What I've also got in there are links for our first two magazine issues are in there. And I have two new, gosh, losing my words, prompt books that I've got out. They're brand new. I haven't announced them yet. So this is the first thing that I've been able to share them with you. They are emotion prompt books. So go over there, check them out. The reason I'm announcing them here is because we're trying to get new followers on our YouTube page. And I would love if you would follow us on our YouTube page. I would love for you to share our YouTube page. And if we can get 50 followers on our YouTube page by Saturday, which will be our next live, those of you who have shared it and followed us, I will give away a prompt book. So if you are one of our followers, please share and be one of those followers. I will randomly select one of those. We'll have a random generator and give away a prompt book on Saturday. But you have to be part of that live on Saturday. Be present to win one of our prompt books there. So thank you so much for joining us. I promise I will get better at this as we'll get more accustomed to doing them over and over. And yeah, that's us. Head over to Patreon. Join us for more YouTube things. Like, share, subscribe, do all those things, and we will have more books to win. Thank you so much. Have an awesome night.